We're going to start off with question 1. In which ways are the specifics of rowing, the technique, the boat, the teamwork required, metaphors for what the boys, particularly Joe, learned about life and friendship over the course of the novel?
So at the beginning of Joey's freshman year, he had terrible wrist movements, which in turn brought down the rest of his team, and the coach recognized this. So he kept putting him in and out of the team to see how they would do without him.
Because
and
he wasn't fully on the team yet.
Yeah, and so basically what happened was they couldn't. They still couldn't do very well without him because they were still missing a person.
So they didn't know what to do. They were kind of in
predicament.
Yeah. So the coach still had to keep him on the team because they still needed the one more person. And after a while, his two friends helped him get better with his wrist movements. The coaches helped him coach, and so in turn he realized that even small faults in the team can bring down the team overall.
Yeah, I think he learned Joe didn't let things get to him. He kept working past it. They didn't always want him on the team. They didn't keep him on the team, but he worked to stay on the team eventually and eventually be a good part of it, which is a big part of the novel.
It's one of the reasons why they got so far with this team.
Because they had never stopped fighting. They always kept fighting, even if there was something in the way.
They eventually got really coordinated. And
whether it was someone sick, weather, whatever it was, they always got past boundaries in the way. And I think it also Joe's beginning, the beginning of his life, really also guided him in this direction too, because of the obstacles he had to face without having a supporting past.
I feel like the rejection that Joe was feeling, caused him to work harder. It made him want to work harder. It made him want to be a better player.
He was motivated by it.
He was motivated by it. He wanted to be a full member of the team.
That's why I think, it's not desirable to not have parents growing up, but at the same time, he has an advantage over someone like us, or for example, because he has that motivation, that drive to achieve for gold.
He knows what it takes.
Yeah, he knows.
He grew up without a real family, which is really hard.
That's
especially in a kid's life. Growing up without a family is really hard.
You need people to support you.
Yeah. And in general, it worked all together with his family and the boat.
Yeah. And so moving on from the techniques, because so basically what we were explaining in short was that the techniques of each individual rower added to the team, because the accumulation of small faults brought down the team overall and added seconds, unnecessary seconds to their time. And so, speaking of time, in their sophomore year, when they had to go up against the juniors, in order to determine who would be their school's best team, and that would go off in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And so, in their sophomore year, they had they realized this was their biggest realization of their faults, because when they had gone against the juniors, each day was different. They raced each other every day. I think if I remember correctly, and so every other day, one day the juniors would win, one day the sophomores would win.
Actually were somewhat evenly matched.
Yeah, it was really close. It was a tough decision. And I feel like their chemistry was better than the juniors, which helped
because they were synchronized. And
it's not all about who are the best individual players. It's all chemistry, and
they still needed that push that would get them to be the best.
And speaking of the push, their coaches at the beginning of their sophomore year had actually told them that they were the best individual players.
Yeah, they just had to bring it together.
Yeah. No.
Teamwork's everything in sports like that. They're all,
and
not
the
one
Cox, and they have to all be
rowing.
united.
They're all rowing. They all have to be synchronized at the same exact
It's a team
times.
that's together is it's gonna give him so much benefit. So
And
now moving on to the second question, which is rowing is a sport that's heavily affected by the weather, from heat waves to blizzards to strong winds. Brown uses historical weather conditions to add context to various races. In what ways does the weather he described mirror the characters' internal thoughts or feelings?
so in their freshman year, the weather in Seattle had actually gotten quite cold during the winter, and so while they were on the lake just rowing as usual, they may have been very cold, and
Because Seattle weather,
so Seattle weather's
the water.
pretty
so it was
bad.
always dark, like a lot of rain clouds and all.
Yeah,
so
they even had to row on days when it snowed and when there were blizzards. But even through all of that, the coach noticed that they had actually rowed better as the weather got worse.
So maybe the weather, with their thoughts, it didn't affect them really. Like they weren't basing off their race off of the conditions. They were able to see through that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with those weather conditions, really, like, it's all about
It
chemistry.
is an important
when
part
it's-
about
when it's
rowing.
windy.
Weather is important. Like the weather makes a difference with the wind and the water and the current or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, in important matches, you have to be
Yeah,
prepared
it
for
could
stuff
be. It
like
could.
that.
It could screw you all up.
And the
but
storm,
If you're not
you really
prepared.
can't see what's around you. So
Yeah.
it's almost like it was. If you think about it, mentally, it was like a mental block for them. They really couldn't think about it. You know.
yeah,
Yeah, and you gotta be prepared for stuff like that, especially when you're like competing in the Olympics. Like,
I think
that's a big thing.
he uses historical weather conditions. It makes like the races even more memorable in the book. So after you read it, it actually does add context to the races because it helps you remember the races individually more than just the name, because you could picture in your head because you know what the weather looks like, and it helps you then learn the book even better because then the characters, you just learn more about the characters in the book in general because you know everything about the races. And that's really
That's really
our
all.
podcast.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the book?
I think it was a good book, and it's a good time to read it. We're at an age where we have to, think about the rest of our lives, and we learn that you need to work hard.
We're at
That's
an age
big-
where, to get into the college, it's very
Yeah.
competitive today. You gotta
gotta
really be
put time
working
into
hard.
it.
You gotta put your time into
and
it.
Joey's a perfect
But
example.
also,
of that.
we're growing into full-fledged human beings now.
Yeah.
Like in the book, Joey was realizing who he would trust and who he
Yeah.
could turn to for the rest of his life. We ourselves have to realize who are our real friends, who are the people who are going to be there for me in my time of need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought it was really cool how he came over like what could be like the hardest thing in a kid's life.
And
And
he
he
put it
gave-
all into it. He knew nothing was going to be handed to us.
Yeah, he
as well
put
as us.
everything
Even though we
into
might
it.
be in a slightly better position, we still have to realize that we have to work hard for what we want in life. And this book perfectly shows that. And
And he achieved everything he wanted. He was on the top of his
And it
own world.
also tells us about relationships we need to have and everything. That's really it. So it was a good book to read at this time in our lives.
Yeah, it was really
and I'm
good.
happy I read it.
After all the rejection, Joey still pushed through. He got forward. He
That's
advanced
how
himself.
we have to bring the lessons learned in the book into our own lives. That's basically it.